of the policy decisions made by sociologists. The public sociology is the conscience of policy sociology. But as you see, that's only three. American sociologists can only think in fours. Everything has to be 2 times 2. Otherwise, you can't build your career. So what is the fourth? It is called critical sociology. A critical sociology is a sociology that first and foremost criticizes professional sociology. That is to say, criticizes the foundations of professional sociology, criticizes the philosophical assumptions, the theoretical assumptions, methodological assumptions of professional sociology. In the United States, we have people like C. Wright Mills, Robert Lynn, Alvin Gould, who actually spend much of their lives criticizing this professional sociology. The professionals do not like the critical sociologists because they're continually interrogating the assumptions of the professional sociologists. You know, to do professional sociology, to do research, we work in research programs, paradigms, political sociology, religion, sociology, religion, and the family. There are paradigms and they move forward through the study of anomalies and contradictions. But the assumptions are shared by the community of scientists and are not questioned. The critical sociologist questions the assumptions, questions the values. And many of the critical sociologists of modernization theory came actually from this part of the world, criticizing the assumptions of modernization theory and the implications they have for the less developed world. Yeah. You know, the point is, when you do research, it's like playing chess. You can't play chess and question the rules. You play chess, we agree on the rules, and we play chess and see who wins. You can't question the rules. It's the same with research. You have to do research, make some assumptions. And the critical sociologist is always questioning those assumptions. Somebody from outside has to do that. So, there is an antagonism between professional and critical, but the professional depends upon the critical because the critical actually forces the professional sociologist to think carefully about what they are doing. And just the same way, there can be no critical sociology if there's nothing to criticize. Alright, very good. So we have four very complicated and interdependent and antagonistic types of knowledge. And basically, 2x2 tables have to have dimensions. So we have an academic audience, professional critical, and an extra academic audience, policy and public. And then we have, and I'm not going to go into details, when I talk about instrumental knowledge and reflexive knowledge. Here we are solving problems for agents. Here we are solving puzzles within paradigms. And we call that, I call it instrumental knowledge because it's concerned with puzzles or problems, but takes a whole set of assumptions as given, as opposed to reflexive knowledge, which is all about the discussion of values and goals among academics, critical knowledge, and between publics and sociologists, the public sociology, reflexive knowledge. And that is it. That's my table. And essentially, as you see here, it's knowledge for whom? That's the big question. Is it an academic audience or an extra academic one? And this is, down here, is knowledge for what? Is it knowledge that is concerned with means for given ends? Or is it knowledge that involves discussion about ends, about goals? And this distinction is an old one we found in the writings of Max Weber and the Frankfurt School. And they were very concerned with what? They were very concerned that this reflexive knowledge was disappearing. We were not actually discussing, either as academics or as a society, the goals, the directions of the world. That the instrumental knowledge was overpowering the reflexive knowledge. Claudio Ramos has actually written a paper that talks about how Chilean sociology, post-Pinochet, has actually become an instrumental knowledge, that in Chile, as indeed in many places of the world, the professional and the policy have become more important at the expense of the critical and the public. And obviously, insofar as I am arguing for a public sociology, I want to reassert the importance of reflexive knowledge. So that is what I call the academic division of labour. All right. I got 10 minutes? Okay. 10 minutes. Now, that is the basic scheme, and I could talk about this for a very long time. Essentially, what I am suggesting is that this scheme can apply to any discipline, natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, and I'm saying that actually in different places in the world, any given discipline will have a different balance amongst these four. So in the United States, the professional is incredibly strong. In South Africa, at least until recently, the public was very strong. In Eastern Europe, the critical was very strong in the Soviet period. And policy was very strong in the Soviet Union. So far as there was a sociology, it was often a policy character. So we can see the world, different countries have a different balance amongst these four. What I want to suggest to you is that any sociology, any flourishing sociology, has to have all four. Has to have all four. That is my claim, my sort of normative claim, that we need all four. And it's difficult to keep them all together, but we need them all. They are in an antagonistic and interdependent relationship. They each, in a sense, contribute to the flourishing of the whole. So form an organic division of labour, to use Durkheim's concept. And of course, individuals can be in one or more of these boxes. And people have careers through the boxes, through these different characters. You can trace your own careers, those of you who've got careers. Or you can imagine what your career might be for those who want to do that. Yeah. But anyway, the talk today is about the dilemmas. The dilemmas of public sociology. And my remaining 10 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about those dilemmas. Of how difficult it is to do. And how difficult it is to be sociologists, but and how important it is. I want to take this analytical table and insert it into society. And I want to do this in an analytical way. What I want to do is to suggest to you that we should see this academic division of labour as having interfaces with the world. That each of these four types of knowledge is connected to the world. And now let me show you what I mean. Alright, this is what I call the academic field. We've got professional, policy, public, and critical. Notice I move from squares to circles. That means I'm moving in the direction of the concrete world. I'm putting the table into society and trying to see the interface, the connection between these four and the wider society. So, let's begin down here. There are two types of public sociology. There is the traditional public sociology, in which we write articles in newspapers, we're on television, we're in the media. We have our blogs today. Or we write books that are widely read. So we send this out into the world, and it's discussed. We're promoting discussion. Very good. But it's a real problem. Because we are competing with so many other sources of information, and sociologists have always bad news. Bad news. We're always saying how depressing the world is, how it's shaped by these macro forces that we don't control. So we're really finding it difficult to compete in that world. So there's another form of public sociology, organic public sociology, in which we are directly connected to neighborhoods, to trade unions, to NGOs, in which we're having a conversation with unmediated character. Yeah. And it's less visible. We don't see it. People do it, but they don't. It doesn't become the subject of broad public attention. It is done in a much smaller context. And some of the best public sociology is indeed of this organic character. And particularly in Latin America, where we have these traditions, for example, of participatory action research, which involves the sociologist entering into communities and entering into a dialogue with them. But that's a problem. Because as soon as you enter into a community, you can be drawn onto its terrain. The community wants you to be a policy sociologist, to deliver the goods, to deliver some real tangible results. And you're pulled away from being accountable to sociology. So, immersion in communities often undermines the two-way dialogue. And sometimes, in fact, the sociologists become like a vanguard, dictating what the problem is. There's no dialogue that way either. Okay. You can imagine the problems. Let's move on. There are two types of policy sociology. There is the simple contractual work. You do a survey for some politician or for some agency. They know what the general questions area, thematic area is, and you solve it by generating a survey, you run the survey, you give them the results, and that's money. Contract work. Servants of power, they're sometimes called. Servants of power. As opposed to the advocacy policy sociology, where we think, as sociologists, how to solve a problem of poverty, shall we say. We think about how to solve it, and then we try and convince those with power that our solution is the appropriate one. We advocate, but we retain our autonomy. We retain our autonomy. So the outer zone, as you might say, of the policy world, the outer zone in this picture is one that risks absorption into the field of politics, of policymakers, just as the organic public sociology risks absorption into the politics of communities. And then we have the two dimensions of professional sociology. There are the conditions for research programs, for paradigms, for us to do research collectively in universities. But increasingly, we are subject to regulation from outside. Arbitrary world rankings of universities, arbitrary evaluations imposed on us by states from outside the university. And sometimes universities are complicit in actually undermining the capacity for us to autonomously generate research. Yeah. And let me finally get to the critical, the two dimensions of the critical sociology. The critical sociology, as I've defined it, first and foremost, is a criticism of the foundations of professional sociology. Its value foundations, its theoretical foundations. But it is also, critical sociology generates a critique of the wider society. A critique of the wider society. Because in thinking about the value foundations of sociology, whether they're concerned with questions of freedom or inequality, of justice, whether these questions are being sort of underpin sociology, then simultaneously they are also issues in the wider society. And so critical sociology too has these two dimensions, the critique of academic work and the critique of the wider society that actually infuses values into public sociology. Yeah. Well, my 10 minutes are up. So let me try and just say a few things about this academic field.